My name is Sawyer Arvin Martin. The Arvin comes from my grandfather on my mother's side, Arvin Workman. My grandpa Arv was a captain in the U.S. Naval Reserves and a college professor. An athlete, the father of 4 children, grandfather of 12, a deacon in his church, and in my opinion, a creative genius. One of his most enduring creations is known only within our family, and until now we've never really shared it with anybody else. Today, over 30 years after its inception and 5 years after his death, I remember one thing from my childhood with Grandpa Arv better than anything else. Every Christmas, my family gathered at my grandparents' house to participate in something we like to call the game. Here's my Uncle Larry on the game's origin.
It all seemed to start initially as just a plain treasure hunt where the young kids would have to scour the house and find a basket or box that had an orange and a candy bar, a Hershey's chocolate candy bar, maybe a candy cane for each of us. And then at some point, as we got a little older, it got kind of rough because whoever found it first got to open their present first. And so he instituted actual guidelines, which were very cleverly inserted into the wrappers of Hershey candy bars. And then the puzzles just continued to grow in intricacy. The $2 bills started getting introduced because my dad, back in the old days, if he took his pay in $2 bills, he actually got an extra $2 bill for every 50 that he took in pay.
The easiest way to describe the game would be to call it a scavenger hunt. It always began with dozens of Hershey's chocolate bars and ended with hundreds of $2 bills. But everything in between was up to Grandpa Arv. My own mother remembers the immense variety of themes her dad incorporated into his yearly contests.
My first memories of the game involved mostly the candy bars, the Hershey bars, and money, and probably some sort of hunt in between. But sometime during my teen years, Dad turned it into his own version of a full-on scavenger hunt. I say his own version because it was unlike any scavenger hunt you've ever seen. He always included locks and codes and toolboxes and decks of cards and paper plates and PVC pipes and songs and dates and maps and trivia. He found so much delight in the detail of things, and he wove that passion into the game every year so that he could share them with us.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
The game went on like that for years, and continued even after his children moved away and had their own families. Grandpa Arv simply morphed the game to wrap in a whole new generation of children while still managing to challenge the adults. I remember Grandpa Arv would basically set some of the candy bars out on the coffee table to make it easy for us kids to find. But I also heard stories about my parents finding candy bars months after Christmas that he had hidden so well that even he couldn't remember where he had put them. As I got older, I found ways to help the rest of the family. Grandpa would often include clues or questions specifically designed to bring us kids into the mix. I remember several occasions where Grandpa designed the game so that it was one of his grandkids who would be the one to solve the final clue and lead the rest of the family to the prize. But a funny thing happened as I grew older and began to take a more serious role in solving the game. Except, it really wasn't that funny. We didn't know it then, but Grandpa Arv was beginning his slow descent into dementia. What had once been a delightfully wicked complexity of a master puzzler became more and more a confused and confusing hodgepodge of ill-conceived and half-executed ideas. Here's how my dad remembers it.
Dad won me over early with the game. I'm kind of a sucker for challenges like this, and we had some of our best times together as an extended family working to figure out his puzzles. But during the few years of Dad's decline, the game was maybe the most obvious evidence of the severity of his dementia.
After Grandpa Arv died in June of 2009, his children were determined to carry on the tradition of the game. I think all of his kids, my mom, my aunts, and uncle, have been doing versions of the game since then. My mom and dad put one together last year that was pretty good. It wasn't as discombobulated as some of those games we played at Grandpa Arv's house those last few years, but it also wasn't quite as fun. We played the game my parents created. It began with Hershey's bars and ended with $2 bills, though Grandpa no longer made up the middle of the story. But here's the thing. The whole time we played the game, we talked about Grandpa Arv. We laughed about old games. We remembered Christmas at Grandpa Arv's house. He was a guy who spent hundreds of hours building something his kids and grandkids would consume in an afternoon. He took enormous pleasure in seeing his family enjoying what he had created for them. He realized that the unity we achieved as a family while playing the game was worth more than any present he could ever give us. That's the kind of guy he was, and we remember all that about him every time we play the game.